You don't have a discipline problem. You have a decision problem. You keep calling it inconsistency, but it's not inconsistency. It's avoidance. Because the truth is, you know exactly what you should be doing. You just don't want to do it. So instead, you rename it. You call it burnout. You call it lack of motivation. You call it I'm not ready yet. Anything but what it really is. Disobedience. You're not struggling to start. You're struggling to submit. And those are not the same thing. Because starting feels productive. But submitting feels costly. Starting lets you stay in control. Submitting requires you to give it up. And that's where most people stop. Not because they can't move forward, but because they don't want to let go. You keep telling yourself, I just need more discipline. But discipline isn't your issue. Clarity isn't your issue. And also direction isn't your issue. The issue is you don't like the instructions. So instead of following them, you stall, you hesitate, you overthink, and you wait for that feeling to change. But it won't. Because obedience doesn't start with feelings. It starts with a choice. Let's be honest. If it felt easy, you would have done it already. If it felt comfortable, you wouldn't be stuck. The resistance you feel, that tension, that internal pushback, that's not confusion. That's confrontation. You're being confronted with the version of you that has to change. And change always feels like a loss. Loss of habits, loss of comfort, and loss of control. So stepping into it, you step around it. You stay busy, you stay distracted, you stay preparing. But you never actually move, because movement requires commitment, and commitment removes options. You don't need more time, you need more courage. This isn't the thing holding you back. Fear is. Fear of getting it wrong, fear of failing, fear of losing what's familiar. So you stay in place and call it patience. But patience doesn't feel like pressure. And what you're feeling right now is pressure. Pressure to grow, pressure to move, pressure to stop pretending you don't know. You felt it before, that moment where everything got quiet, where you knew what you needed to happen. No confusion, no second guessing, just clarity. Clear, direct, uncomfortable, and for a second, you were ready. You almost moved, you almost stepped, but then your mind kicked in. What if this goes wrong? What if I'm not ready? What if this isn't the right time? And just like that, you talked yourself out of obedience. Not because the direction changed, but because your comfort got louder. You don't need more confirmation. You need to stop negotiating. Because every time you delay, you're not gaining clarity. You're building resistance. You're training yourself to ignore what matters. And the longer you ignore it, the easier it becomes, until one day you don't even feel it anymore. Not because it disappeared, but because you silenced it. Here's the truth most people avoid. You're not stuck. You're choosing not to move. And that choice has consequences. Because every day you don't act, you reinforce the habit of hesitation. You build a pattern of delay. You strengthen the version of you that avoids responsibility. And slowly, that becomes your identity. Not because you wanted it to, but because you repeated it. You say you won't change, but your actions say you want comfort. And those two don't coexist. Because growth demands something. It demands discomfort. It demands sacrifice. It demands that you become someone different. And becoming someone different requires doing things you don't feel like doing. And here's where it gets real. You don't need more inspiration. You didn't need another video. You didn't need another push. You already have what you need. What you're missing is execution. Because knowing without doing changes nothing. Hearing without acting changes nothing. Wanting without moving changes nothing. You're not lacking discipline. You're delaying obedience. And until you deal with that, nothing changes. Not your habits, not your mindset, not your life. Because everything shifts the moment you move. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for things to make sense. Because they won't. Not at first. Clarity comes after movement. Confidence comes after action, not before. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to take the next step. Even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it's uncertain, even if it costs you something. Because that's where growth lives. Not in comfort, not in delay, and not in excuses. You don't have a discipline problem. You have an obedience problem. And the moment you face that, everything will change. Stay motivated, spirits. Thank you.